Between the two of them, the inside of Coates, Parker gets too heavily involved. And that's Whitehead and Coates.
Yes, 1 2 1 2 1 2 testing. Yes. Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to the VRRC, where the latest round of our latest Touring Car Championship is upon us, and we make, for many of the drivers, a welcome return to the United Kingdom. The calendar thus far taking us the length and breadth of Europe, and now we land back on British shores, and a real driver's favourite, and I happen to know a favourite amongst the commentary team as well. It is Donington Park's National Circuit, a venue that always produces some of the best racing around. Andy McEwan here, joined by Jack Oliphant as always. And Jack, we're getting down to crunch time in the championship now. And what a perfect venue we've got for our latest round. I'm really, really excited for this one.
I think it should be pretty decent, shouldn't it? I mean, Donington Park and then Hockenheim to finish us off. We've already been to so many amazing tracks over the course of this particular season. I think, you know, if anything, the last 6 weeks have been to go by. Well, welcome return to Donington, a track they all know so well. Will produce some excellent racing.
Yeah, absolutely. And as I said, we get down to the back end of the season now, and there's extra pressure on each and every race, and extra significance on every race result now, because those points start to get closer and closer and closer. And after a disappointing week last week for Jack Smith, in fact, he's had a couple of disappointing rounds of late, it has started to tighten the championship up ever so slightly. It was Carl Felvers who had the best score from last week's races at Zandvoort. Oliver Gibson, Jack Smith's DK Power teammate in the other BMW, second highest scorer, with Joel Lask, Andy Dorman and Nicky Taylor all scoring reasonably well too, and that was of some significance, particularly for Oliver Gibson, who's really now starting to emerge properly as Jack Smith's biggest championship rival. And it means that after the drop scores are calculated, it's getting tight at the top, Jack, between the two teammates.
Is indeed, yeah, we can actually see how tight it is. Jack Smith 175, Oliver Gibson 157. Something quite satisfying about that, isn't there? Elliot Daltonaire in third, only 4 points behind is Nicky Taylor, Joel Lask, Kyle Felvers, all within the sort of 8 points barrier between sixth and third place. And then you go all the way down to Josh Martin in 10th. But again, it's not beyond the realms of possibility, Andy, to potentially get up there, is it? And sort of mix it in the prize-winning positions, because of course there are plenty of prizes on offer.
Yes, there are, absolutely. Anyone in the top 5 in the points come season's end will be receiving some pretty nice prizes. We will have the Cammus Simulation steering wheel for our eventual champion, the Aegon by AOC gaming monitor, the curved gaming monitor for our second place driver. The third place driver will receive a sim racing seat, and all of those top 3 receiving trophies as well, whilst fourth and fifth place drivers in the championship at season's end will receive some VRRC VRRC merchandise. We've also got the Driver of the Round award, which is the jacket, the NGK jacket that is given to the driver that we decide amongst ourselves has performed the best over the course of the evening, and also the Fan of the Round is going to receive the NGK bobble hat. And to win the Fan of the Round, you just need to take part in some of the social media chatter, the YouTube chat throughout the night. And if your comments catch our eye, then an NGK bobble hat will be heading your way. So that is what's up for grabs. And as we now start to really get into these final couple of rounds, I think the reality of the prizes that are on offer starts to sink in a bit now. And Jack Smith and Oliver Gibson in particular, very, very determined, I'm sure, to try and net those top prizes, not just because they want the prizes though, Jack, but also the honour of being champion, because this has been one of the most competitive championships I think we've ever run here at the VRRC. The driver who comes out on the top at the end can be really, really proud of what they've achieved.
Exactly, yeah, and we can actually go straight into qualifying to see how they're warming their tyres up and everything like that. It's going to be a pretty hot sort of top 10, I reckon, we've got here in Donington. It's going to be exciting as well, Andy, because a lot of these drivers know full well what they're getting into with this particular circuit, don't they? It's all about how well can they get into the trains. No hybrid system, I was going to call it DRS, then hybrid system to be used at all, obviously, in qualifying, but plenty of slipstreaming, plenty of people getting to the rhythm of it, and by the looks of it, plenty of people using as much track as they're humanly allowed to.
Yes, I don't think that line would be fully legal in real life. Now, was that maybe a spot of rain that I just saw coming down? I think it is starting to drizzle a bit. We've got dynamic weather incorporated into the championship for the first time this season, and I think, unless my screen is glitching, Jack, that we've got a little bit of precipitation. Now, that's going to really liven up this qualifying session. You've got to try and get a lap in early on cold tyres before the track goes away from you.
Yeah, it's. I think a lot of these drivers are currently on medium tyres, so nobody out there on the wets or anything, and that's going to be what they want. If we do have rain within the first couple of minutes, it's somewhat going to ruin the qualifying. We're going to be struggling for things to talk about, Andy, because everybody's going to go in the pits. No one's going to go back out, because why on earth would you?
No, exactly. Well, I'll tell you what, then, before the track starts to get really slow, why don't we jump on board with someone and take a little look at the Donington Park National Circuit. Here we go then, through the final chicane, and we are on board with Jordan Taylor, getting a nice little slipstream from another one of the Hyundais just ahead of him. Crosses the timing line, heads down towards Redgate Corner, uses all of that pit lane entry to widen out the entry line, really hook that inside curve. Very gentle on the throttle in a front-wheel drive car, very easy to understeer wide. That will ruin your momentum then all the way through Hollywood, the double apex right-hander, and then full commitment, flat out, hook the curb through the crane of curves, and then into a real commitment corner at the old hairpin. Careful on track limits on the exit, and that looked pretty neat and tidy from Jordan. Again, you need to get a good exit there because it's quite steeply uphill then through the left-hand kinks at Starkey and Schwantz, and then into one of my favourite corners on the track, McLeod. You really roll the car into there again, use the curb to rotate the car, which you'll also try and do heading into Coppice Corner, a blind approach to that turn. You can't see the apex until you're fully committed to the corner. Very easy to drift a bit wide. Again, good exit important. It's a real momentum circuit, Donington Park. The long back straight past the exhibition centre follows, and then it's completed by the big braking zone into the Robert chicane, over the curb on the right, over the curb on the left, and straight into the pit lane goes Jordan Taylor. So we picked the perfect time to jump on board with him. That clearly not an improved lap time, but a good illustration, I think, there, Jack, of what makes this track a real favourite amongst the drivers. Well,
I think you fully well know my appreciation for Donington Park. It is awesome, absolutely. And you're right, it is a favourite. It's also a fan favourite because it's one of those few circuits in real life that you can actually see the majority of the action. Because of course you go and stand at that Hollywood stand up by turn 2, and all of a sudden you can see, I'd say, about 75% of the circuit, which is always nice because if you go to Silverstone, you're likely to see maybe 1 or 2 corners out the entire massive 100-acre estate or something stupid. But it is awesome. It's very momentum-based, as you mentioned at the moment. The driver who's got that momentum is Joel Lask. Carl Felvers has gone and put in a sector 3 that was good enough for a purple. Josh Martin's going slightly quicker as well. So as we see him going through the final couple of corners, he's on 2 green sectors. Not been a brilliant season for qualifying for Josh, but it looks like maybe he's starting to pick himself up here today.
Yeah, although he did make a bit of a mess of the final chicane, I think. Clobbered the curb a bit too hard. That means he didn't end up improving in the end and stays down in 10th place. Andy Dorman, though, having a really good lap put in early on there. He's up into 2nd place in the qualifying session. With Joel Lask just ahead of him by a couple of tenths or so. Andy Dorman here approaches that final chicane. Lots of curb taken on the inside. It's very easy to invalidate the lap doing that by cutting a bit too much of the inside curb. Dorman seemed to get that just about okay. I think no improvement that time was there. No, there wasn't. Despite a personal best in the first sector, not quite able in the end to find a major improvement. So Lask remaining fastest, Dorman second, then Nicky Taylor and Carl Felvers both in the pit lane. They've been working together, I think, through a little bit of this session, and they're going to continue to do so as they leave the pit lane pretty much simultaneously, with Elliot Dalton-Ayres in 5th position. Now, unless I am being dumb, which does happen occasionally, Jack, I do not see the name of our championship leader on that timing tower. So is it possible that Jack Smith is absent tonight? And if that's the case, this is definitely going to change the championship, because his dropped score situation actually wasn't looking all that pretty even coming into the night, was it?
No, you're not a fool for this time, Andy. I can confirm that Jack Smith isn't here tonight. He is on holiday. And you're right, it does mean it's somewhat throws a bit of a spanner in the works in terms of his particular drop rounds and everything like that. It's a bit of a shame for him, but he's going to have to just deal with it and get on with it when he comes back as well, which obviously he's only got 1 week left. It's going to close everything up. Luckily for him, he has got a nice enough championship buffer that potentially he might get away with it somewhat, but it's going to be certainly a little bit of squeaky bum time, shall we say, when it comes down to Hockenheim in a week's time.
Yeah, well, Oliver Gibson is 18 points behind him in the championship. If Jack Smith isn't going to score tonight, which quite clearly he's not, because he is away on holiday, he is going to then count back the 32 points that he's currently dropping from Barcelona. So essentially, even though he's currently sat on a beach somewhere hot, he will score, in a way, 32 points tonight, will Jack Smith. Now, that doesn't sound too bad. However, last week, Oliver Gibson scored 47 points. So if Gibson were to have a similar night tonight to the one that he had at Zandvoort a week ago, he could potentially outscore Smith by about 15 or 16 points. He was only 18 behind to start with. So he is in a position here, Oliver Gibson, where a good night could really tighten the championship up going into that final round. Yeah, and he'll be hoping and praying that he obviously gets that opportunity. He's currently in 5th place, 108.123. Again, quite a satisfying roundabout number, but it's not quite going his way in terms of the sector times in this particular lap. Still 6 minutes left. Let's have a look as well. We've got some, well, in fact, as he always does, Oliver Gibson repping the sponsors on the stream there as well. Simon Thorpe Motor Services, Sherburn Rubber MOT Centre, and the Hop Cavern Howden. And for Bob, apparently, on top of his South Park, I believe that is. It's Cartman, isn't it? On top of Cartman's cuddly toy. I'll have to take your word for that, Jack, because I've never actually seen South Park. And, have you not? No, and my quality of life has not deteriorated as a result, so I'm quite happy with that. But yes, Oliver Gibson, the pressure on a little bit. 5th fastest, that's an okay qualifying effort, but I think he is going to be a bit disappointed if that's where he ends up starting. Now, it does look to me as though the track conditions are deteriorating now, aren't they? Because we're seeing drivers really struggling to get anything better than sort of low to mid 108 at the moment. As I say that, Oliver Gibson did just put in a personal best sector on his previous lap, but that rain does look to be getting a little bit heavier, and that is potentially, well, no potentially about it, I think it is now starting to slow people down, and so more and more people bailing for the pit lane with just under 5 minutes to go. Normally, this is the point in the session where things really start hotting up, but not at the moment, it would seem, although we do have an improvement, actually, as Nicky Taylor proves me wrong and jumps onto the front row. He did indeed, yeah, with a green sector 3. Andy Carroll's just gone green sector 1, so might be worth keeping an eye on him. See how he gets on through the rest of the lap. But you're right, I mean, there doesn't seem to be many people getting that much quicker. In fact, quite a lot of invalidated lap times. Andy Dorman went off in all 3 sectors on the previous lap. Oliver Gibson's trying to follow suit, and so is Elliot Dalton-Ayres. So clearly running a little bit wide, pushing it a little bit too hard for what the conditions are allowing. Bit of a shame for them, a bit of a shame for us as neutrals as well. But if it means that it's going to be a wet race,
then that will be fairly interesting, Andy, because of course we haven't really had that many wet weather events this year.
No, we haven't. It's typical, isn't it? We come to the UK, the one and only visit to a British racetrack this season, and of course, the Heavens Open. That is, it's not really helping our reputation for having pretty rubbish weather, is it? But we are still getting some improvements, actually. I think spotted there Jordan Taylor improving up to 5th. That knocks Oliver Gibson down a spot, actually, down into 6th position, so he's not going to be terribly pleased with that. The other driver, there are a few drivers who are realistically in contention in the championship, especially with the absence of Jack Smith tonight. Well, let's have a look at how they're getting on. Elliot Dalton-Ayres is 3rd in the championship, 7th in the qualifying section as Andy Dorman improves back onto the front row. So he and Nicky Taylor trading that second fastest time for the time being. Taylor himself is 4th in the championship, so he's probably doing the best, really, of the outside bets, maybe, in the championship. And actually, Joel Lask is only a point behind him, and he's on pole. So this could be a real game-changing night, this. We were sort of saying that it was down to Oliver Gibson to try and do something with his teammate and overhaul that points deficit. But actually, with Jack being away tonight, that does open the door potentially for the likes of Nicky Taylor and Joel Lask, and even Kyle Felvis, if he has a good night, to really get back into contention too. And a lot of those drivers qualifying towards the front.
Well, Kyle Felvis is certainly a driver who I think has been slightly improving over the course of the last couple of weeks. We're likely to see him challenge forward, although his lap times, actually, you know what? And it's very close at the top there, isn't it? I sort of was slightly distracted by the 107 going to the 108 and everything like that. But actually, those 108s are ridiculously close. If you go from the likes of Oliver Gibson down to Andy Carroll, so 6th, 7th and 8th, all within a 1/10 of a second of each other. And then you don't even have to go that much further. I mean, Kyle Felvis to Jordan Taylor only separated by 0.03 of a second. Andy Dorman to Nicky Taylor, 0.02 of a second. So it's really very close. I think it goes to show that, one, the early lap times were key. You were absolutely right. And two, everybody knows the circuit like the back of their hand. So it's going to be marginal errors that are going to make the difference.
It certainly is, and well, as we get towards the conclusion of qualifying now, it looks as though maybe we have our grid order set. Riding on board here with Kyle Felvis then, as he makes his way up the hill into Cobby's Corner, the perfect view to see whether he makes the apex, which he does just about, and drifts the car out wide. In fact, he doesn't drift the car out wide, pulls to the right-hand side of the road, he's backing off, maybe someone's about to...
I think he's run out of fuel.
Oh, has he?
Because all of a sudden the car audio just died all of a sudden when he hit the apex. There he goes, Andy Dorman just disappearing past him. Going into the apex now, see if a little bit on board with him there. Trying to clip the apexes and dives to the pits as well.
Yes, that's we're seeing quite a few people, I think, ending their session early. You can see as well quite nicely from the onboard footage there the rain coming down upon the windscreen, so definitely track conditions deteriorating now, and I think we probably have our grid order. Joel Lask and Andy Dorman have both bailed for the pit lane. Nicky Taylor is still circulating but not improving. Paul Laramie just put in a personal best in the first sector, I noticed, a bit further back. He's in 11th position, bumped into Paul actually at Donington Park at the weekend, so he was getting a little bit of last-minute practice in, I think, before this all-important night of racing. As he was out there racing his BMW. Chris Blakey was there as well at the weekend. So those two, well, 10th and 11th at the moment, aren't they, Blakey and Laramie? And Laramie stays in 11th place. We had a bit of this sort of weather actually at the weekend, so no excuses, Paul and Chris. We should be seeing you getting right towards the front of the field if the rain sticks around.
Yeah, and as qualifying's about to, the checker flag's about to drop, sorry. I suppose it's going to be a bit of a surprise of whether it will stick around. It's going heavier and heavier. The server does reset, I believe, so that they change it to sunny conditions. If Eric Axelson, the god of Assetto Corsa here at VRRC, decides to change it, then it's not going to be wet to dry. It's just going to be starting as dry, or he can start it in the rain. He can do whatever he wants with it, which is quite nice. But the checkered flag has dropped. There are no real improvements, Andy, so why don't we come back in about 30 seconds to a minute time and have a chat to our pole position driver in a couple of minutes.
Welcome back, everyone, to the VRRC, where qualifying has concluded here at Donington Park, and it's Joel Lask on pole position. Joel joins us in the commentary box now, and well, we've spoken a few times this season, Joel, and you've sort of been saying you've not had the time to put the practice in that you usually would, and maybe that's affected particularly your qualifying performances in the early part of the season. I'm sure you were very grateful then to come back to a track that you're very familiar with, and we know you're always strong around here as well.
Oh yeah, definitely. I love this track. I was quite impressed by my time, to be fair. I wasn't doing that in practice. So, yeah, I knew it was going to rain as well. So it was just get that lap in early. But yeah, no, happy with that.
How slippery did it get towards the end? Because some behind you were still making some small improvements, but it was hard to tell really just how wet the track was getting.
To be fair, I didn't go out, which is probably a silly thing. I did that lap, tried another one, then see the rain starting to come, so I pulled in and left it, hoping that was going to be good enough. So I chanced it a little bit. I probably should have gone out just to see what the conditions were like, but I still don't think it's wet enough for wet tyres yet. I think it's still slicked.
Interesting. Okay, well, that's that could make our first race very, very exciting. That's for sure. As if it wasn't going to be anyway, because it's very tight as always at the top. And well, an opportunity tonight, really, Joel, for you to properly get yourself back into championship contention. With Jack Smith being away, there's an opportunity maybe to outscore him by a decent chunk tonight. So, what do you reckon? Have you still got half a chance of getting back into the fight?
I mean, that's the idea, but we'll see. I think some people are making some interesting tyre choices I'm seeing at the moment. So, yeah, I think strategy is going to be a big one on this. But hopefully, if it doesn't rain anymore, we'll get some good points on the board and see what happens in the reverse race.
Well, it sounds like you've got a bit of thinking and strategizing to do, Joel, so we'll leave you to it. Best of luck in the race. Congrats on the pole position. And yeah, let's see what the weather does.
Nice one. Cheers, Andy.
So Joel Lask then on pole here at Donington Park. And well, Jack, that sounds very interesting indeed. I do love these kind of races where the weather is just starting to turn, you know, cars are grinning up and drivers have got to try and make a decision. Do we go for the slicks? Do we go for the wets? Because it's not necessarily what the track conditions are like now that are important. It's a 20-minute race. So it might well be wet for the first 5 minutes, but then if the rain stops, you've got to then nurse wet tyres through another 15 minutes. And we know on Assetto Corsa in particular, tyre temperatures and pressures are really sensitive. That can really hurt your performance out there. So some big decisions being made right now.
Especially by those, I would say, in the rear-wheel drive machinery. Oliver Gibson is a driver who is on the medium tyres. If there's anybody who is going to suffer during a wet period, it is going to be him. He's hoping and praying that he's going to be able to get through it. Josh Martin is as well on mediums, so Alok Iyengar on the mediums. I'll tell you what, they're brave boys, aren't they? But it's they got pretty good driving intuition. I'm sure they'll be absolutely fine. And in fact, Andy, you know what? We can test everybody else's driving intuition because you can race against these drivers in the fun race that we particularly have.
Very good.
I know, I'm here all week. There's supercarts over in Japan as well. It's I'll be honest, I haven't actually looked at the graphic close enough to know where that is. But I don't know if you've ever heard of Ebisu.
I have not.
I haven't either. But yeah, what if we wanted to learn about it? We could turn up on Sunday, free of charge, 8 p.m. BST, of course. So if anybody out there who wants to get involved with some VRRC action, then the fun races are supercarts this week. And that's not the only thing you can get involved in, of course, as well. There is the ever important tyre, which is a round Paul Ricard at the moment in a old-fashioned Clio V6, one of the best hot hatches or most famous hot hatches around, aren't they, Andy? A great little car, and there's cash prizes on offer as well.
Indeed, so rear-wheel drive, I think, wasn't it, which was rare for a short wheelbase hot hatch, a fantastic little car. Paul Ricard, I think, a criminally underrated and overhated circuit. And yeah, £15 could be heading your way if you set the fastest time. So do get involved. It began on the 18th of September, so it's been running for about a week and a bit. So you've still got the best part of a week to get your times in and get yourself involved in the time attack events, and that's just one of many ways really that you can get involved for on a relatively casual basis. However, if proper competition is what you're really after, then you may well be interested in our new championships coming very soon. We're trying something a bit different. We're doubling up. So we're still going to have the live broadcast championship. That will, for the next series, be the Porsche Cayman Cup. So a one-make rear-wheel drive GT4 car, usual format, 15-minute qualifying, 2 20-minute races. And then beforehand, we will be having a Renault Clio Cup championship, slightly shorter races. There'll be a live watch along that you can tune into as well. Or if you want to get out on track, you have 2 championships that you can race in, and that will all be on the usual Wednesday night. A brilliant idea, I think, Jack.
Yeah, it's sort of, we used to do an academy. I'm not even sure if you were around, Andy, when the academy was a thing. Yeah, it's I do remember doing both of them, actually. The main championship on a Tuesday and the academy on a Wednesday. And it was fantastic stuff. I mean, it was a lot of people who were wanting to potentially join the major championship, but maybe didn't have quite the confidence or the skill level, or weren't quite used to how VRRC run things, and it was an opportunity for them to get involved. And that's essentially what the Clio Cup is as well. Not going to be full broadcast. There's potentially, if we get enough entries, then it's a conversation that might happen, but it's certainly going to be something that if you want to get involved, it's just a little bit of extra racing if you finish early enough and you want to jump on. So yeah, looking forward to seeing how that one all unfolds. A little like how we're excited to see how this race unfolds as well, because of course we mentioned the rain a few times when we were chatting to Joel, and well, I think those who have started on the medium tyres, which has all of a sudden become most of the grid actually. I reckon, in fact, as I'm looking at the tyre situation, they're actually changing as I look at it. The only person who stayed on the wet is Chris Blakey. Are they all being a bit brave? It looks pretty wet out there to me.
And the rain doesn't look like it's abating, although, that could change, couldn't it? Certainly, track conditions were not terrible towards the end of qualifying, so quite clearly they can manage a little bit of water before they start slipping and sliding everywhere. But that's on warm tyres. They went out. They went out early, they got some heat in the tyres, and then they were all right. Now, of course, they're going to be starting from a standing start on cold tyres, low tyre pressures, and they're going to go barrelling down into, Redgate's going to be a challenge, but the old hairpin really is what makes me nervous in these sort of conditions. Could be a very, very exciting start to the race. So, getting ready to go with Joel Lask and Andy Dorman on the front row of the grid. Lask on the left as we look at it, Dorman on the right, with Nicky Taylor and Kyle Felvis in behind. And remember, Lask, Taylor, Felvis, Gibson, Dalton Ayres, all looking to maximise their opportunity, with the championship leader, Jack Smith, not being here this evening, and that could really mix the championship table up. Here we go then. Red lights about to go on. 20 minutes on the clock here at Donington Park. Drivers getting themselves ready to go, as those red lights will go out after quite a long hold. Now we are away and racing here at Donington Park. Good start made by the looks of it from Joel Lask there from the inside of row 1. Dorman maybe under a bit of pressure as they head into that first corner. Nicky Taylor, that is up the inside of him. That was Josh Martin trying to find a gap on the inside line as well. Through the right hand they go. Quite a few drivers now seemingly have made that late call to go onto the wet tyres. And I would say maybe that's, that's the hybrid graphic, isn't it? That was actually illuminating in different colours. Down through the old hairpin they head. And a perfect start from Joel Lask. Nicky Taylor second. Dorman down to third, with Felvis and Taylor completing the top 5.
Yeah, most of them are on the medium sides. Although I haven't seen any bad start from Chris Blakey, who started on the wet. It's just whether or not his lap times can just about keep up as well. The hybrid is a situation that it's going to be quite scary, I think, if you hit that as you go down towards the final corner. As it gets a little bit more wet, we could see a lot of people skidding off and going straight through the chicane. The chicane actually we're looking at right now is a few people, Carl Felvis included, are starting to charge up towards it. Let's see if they can actually get the car stopped at all. Carl Felvis on the outside of a defending Andy Dorman by the looks of it, but they've all absolutely massacring that curb, which means they must have broke early enough.
Yeah, they seem to have done. Out onto the pit straight they will go, and down towards the braking zone at Redgate Corner. Now, that is Joel Lask leading the way. Everyone trying to fan out through Redgate Corner then. Nicky Taylor doing his best to go after him then. Only 4 tenths between them. Some good side-by-side battles further back. Oliver Gibson there struggling, I think, as Jack sort of predicted might be the case. Struggling a little bit in these conditions in the BMW. And as they drop down through the old hairpin, you can see there that he was stuck in behind Elliot Dalton Ayres. Out wide there goes Josh Martin to try and make a move, but it is going to be Joel Lask the leader, Nicky Taylor second, Dorman third, third, fourth Taylor, fifth Carl Felvis, and that sixth place squabble, Jack, is where all of the action seems to be.
Yeah, it seems that Elliot Dalton-Ayres is somewhat holding the rest of them up, which is a bit of a shock as the two BMWs start falling over each other. Now, the BMWs haven't really particularly gone very well. That's obviously not ideal for Oliver Gibson. We were talking about how much of an important night this was for him. It's looking very, very difficult for him out there as Jordan Taylor defends going in. And I think we have had a bit of a change. That's Andy Carroll going through on Josh Martin, isn't it? Andy Carroll going to come across the line in 7th position. You can see him in the background there. Is that Kyle Felvis versus Jordan Taylor up ahead?
Yes, it is. For 4th position, Felvis trying to go through. I think he was on the inside line there. They're 3 wide further back into Redgate corner, but Kyle Felvis does move into 4th place, so that was significant. He will now try and set off after Andy Dorman out in front. There you can see that leading group dropping through the Craners into the old hairpin. But yeah, the two BMWs really struggling further back. Josh Martin and Oliver Gibson both slipping back behind Andy Carroll. Gibson now trying to come back at Josh Martin a little bit as they climb the hill up towards McLean's corner. And Josh Martin holds that inside line, keeps Gibson at bay. That was Abranosa, I think, absolutely bashing Alok Iyengar out of the way. And Chris Blakey there on his wet tyres. No, sorry, that's Kenny Press, isn't it, behind? Struggling really to make too much progress. Blakey is actually 10th place. So right now, Jack, there doesn't seem to be a huge amount of difference between the wet and the dry tyres. Maybe a bit more confidence for Blakey on cold tyres, but actually now things are settling down. He's running about the same sort of pace as everyone else.
Yeah, and it's, what is the weather going to do? Is it going to stay like this? It's sort of in-betweeny? Is it going to start opening up a little bit? Or is the heavens going to start tipping it down? We'll have to wait and see. As Josh Martin and Oliver Gibson still battling. You can see how hard Josh Martin is having to concentrate. Never seen him concentrate so much, actually, about anything other than making a joke. But he is, right now, driving pretty hard against Oliver Gibson. He's managed to just about fight him off after that attack at turn 1.
Tell you who is going well is Andy Dorman. He was putting purple sectors in on the previous lap, although Carl Felvis is now going even quicker. But there you can see Dorman has caught Nicky Taylor for 2nd position. And Carl Felvis sort of going after him. In fact, they're all bunching together here, aren't they? Joel Lask seemingly struggling a bit now. Taylor's getting closer to him. He's definitely being reeled in by Andy Dorman and Carl Felvis. And Jordan Taylor very much going with them as well. So we're going to have the top 5 under a blanket, I think, before too much longer, especially if Taylor starts to apply the pressure to the race leader. He was on the hybrid down the exhibition straight there, Nicky Taylor, and gets a good run through the Robert chicane. But Lask is now on the hybrid to try and get away from Nicky, who is still in that cool down period. You have to wait 10 seconds after getting off the hybrid button before you can jump back on it again. And that just protected Joel Lask a bit down the straight. Jordan Taylor then nips up the inside of Kyle Felvis, reclaims 4th position at Redgate, and well, that little battling is not really helping them, is it? It's allowing those top 3 to draw further away. Yeah,
when you consider that everything is bunching up a little bit, you're right. All of a sudden, Kyle Felvis' eagerness to get past Jordan Taylor has maybe actually hampered them. There is an awful long way to go, though, isn't there? That's well, under 15 minutes, just about, but still 3/4 of the race pretty much to go in this one as Andy Carroll and Josh Martin use the hybrid to get up the hill as efficiently as they can. Everybody's using the hybrid a pretty equal amount here, Andy. It's Paul Laramie who's got 7 left, but everybody else has pretty much got double figures, 10 or 11 in the top sort of 7 drivers. Andy Carroll down to Joel Lask. Everybody's got 10 or 11 hybrids left. So it's not like they're really, one person is trying to push forward as much as possible and wasting them all. They're all being a little bit more conservative here as Carl Felvis gets a nice run, I think, there out of Jordan Taylor at the final chicane.
See if he can convert that into a move. They've been swapping places a couple of times in recent laps at this part of the circuit, but no, Carl Felvis not quite close enough. There is the youngster, the HFT racing driver, who turns his way through Redgate corner, then heads downhill through the Craner curves, staring at the back of Jordan Taylor's similar Hyundai ahead. Nicky Taylor still staying latched onto the rear bumper of Joel Lask as well, so there's potential in this race, isn't there? We're only about 1/3 of the way through, and definitely some potential for action towards the sharp end. Elliot Dalton-Ayres there in the background has Andy Carroll behind him, Josh Martin getting away from Oliver Gibson, so all of the action in the early stages, Jack, was sort of at the back end of the top 10. As we head into the middle part of the race, though, it is getting a bit more intense at the very front.
Yeah, Carl Felvis has actually put in a purple sector 1. He actually put in a purple sector 1 about 2 laps ago as well, so he's not overly using the hybrid either. He's actually got 10, whereas everybody around him is now dipped into the 9s. Oh, as we're seeing a potential race move, leading move here, as Nicky Taylor dives at the inside of Joel Lask, and that could open the door for Andy Dorman.
I think it will. Dorman's had a good run out of the chicane. Last guy notice isn't using his hybrid down that back straight. That's leaving him vulnerable to attack, but actually it's worked in his favour because Dorman, look, goes round the outside of Taylor, but outbreaks himself, nearly takes out the race leader. Dorman himself was on the hybrid there as well. I think that maybe contributed to that little moment, and Nicky Taylor's going to go back through, but Joel Last came within a couple of feet there, I think, of being wiped out completely by the Focus.
Yeah, he did. We can actually ride on board with Andy Dorman here to go through Old Hairpin. Look at the rear view mirrors. You've got an aggressive Jordan Taylor and Kyle Felvers. Look at the run that Andy Dorman's got on here, though. Do you go left? Do you go right? I've been in that situation enough, Andy, to know that you're pretty much always going to choose wrong. Clip the late apex and try and get up the hill as cleanly as possible. Get towards the final chicane and see if you can make something happen.
Indeed so, through Coppice Corner, back of the Ford, steps out slightly, look, as he goes over the top of the crest. Brilliant onboard footage here from on board the third placed car, which is still in third place, despite Dorman briefly getting ahead of Nicky Taylor a lap ago. Down through the chicane again, looking for the exit. Much more important to get off these corners well than it is to go charging into them, and actually Dorman didn't get it right that time, so he's under pressure from this man, Jordan Taylor, who closes in with the slipstream and the hybrid. He looks to the inside line, breaks later than the Ford, and I think is about to move through into third position. He's got the move made, I reckon. Has there been a switch back from Dorman? No, there hasn't. So Jordan Taylor, who was fifth a few laps ago, is now on the podium.
Yeah, and Dorman, who was all of a sudden looking like he was potentially taking Nicky Taylor, he got held up though, and that's the momentum that you were talking about earlier, Andy, isn't it? It's the fact that, you know, one corner getting scuppered by a driver who's slightly slow can all of a sudden find you half a lap later falling behind, and then a full lap later maybe falling behind again, because here comes Kyle Felvers and he carries on through, follows his mate Jordan Taylor through, and Andy Dorman drops down to fifth position.
Yep, so Felvers up to fourth then, Dorman slipping backwards. That's a bit of a shame for him, but none of this really allowing the leaders to escape massively. Lask and Nicky Taylor still only separated by 6/10. I'll be interested now, though, to see whether or not Jordan Taylor has got the pace, along with Carl Felvers, I suppose, to close in on the leading two. Through the chicane they come. Out onto the back straight. Further back, meanwhile, I reckon Josh Martin might be starting to just nibble into that advantage that Andy Carroll had ahead of him. So 7th and 8th getting themselves closer together. But still, the action is up front where Dorman goes for an absolute banzai move up the inside of Kyle Felvers. Did that work? No, it didn't. But that 10 out of 10 for effort there, Jack.
Yeah, to be honest, I wasn't looking. I was trying to find Josh Martin on my camera thing, but it looked like a completely banzai move, like you just said. Unfortunate that it didn't come off. Maybe fortunate that no one came off the circuit is probably the better way of thinking about it. But it's a sort of aggressive move that I quite like to see. That's certainly going to be holding Kyle Felvers up, because he's going to be having a lot to think about all of a sudden.
It's tempting, isn't it, into Redgate, because it's quite a big braking zone. It's quite a wide bit of track, and obviously the drivers are swinging out as wide as they can on the entry, so that leaves this big inviting bit of space to the inside line, which is really tempting to go and try and use. But unless you get to the apex first and almost make it a bit of a block pass, the momentum is always with the car on the outside, and I suspect that that's how Kyle Felvers managed to stay in front. Joel Lask now starting to use the hybrids a bit more readily, sets what is, I believe, the fastest lap of the race, and look, he's gone. So within the space of a lap or so, all of a sudden, Lask has managed to pull away. I wonder whether Nicky Taylor's trying to now conserve a few of those hybrids, whereas Lask is starting to use them in order to get away.
Yeah, well, he's doing a good job, isn't he, Lask? He's got 7 hybrids left, actually, so he's got more than Nicky Taylor, Jordan Taylor, Kyle Felvers, Andy Dorman, Elliot Daltonaires. All of them are on 5 or 6, whereas Joel Lask has 7 left to his name, which is going to be very impressive. Oliver Gibson, though, is the driver that has hardly used any. I think he may be a bit scared of them in that rear-wheel drive. He's got 11 to his name, compared to Paul Laramie just behind, who's got 2 left. So it's not the best for Oliver Gibson. Maybe he's thinking, okay, this race is written off. I'll focus on trying to get a good position for race number 2, of course, that reverse grid race, and hope that I can predict the weather a little bit better.
Yeah, because it's a difficult one, isn't it? If he gains another couple of places, it's not going to be easy to do, for starters. He doesn't seem to have the raw pace in this one. If he gains another couple of places, he'll gain a handful of points, but that also puts him closer to the middle of the grid for the reverse grid race. Now, it's a slightly smaller grid anyway tonight than we used to, a few drivers away on business commitments and holidays, but even so, you want to be starting as close to the front of the grid as possible, so you might well be right. I think he is sort of sacrificing this race now, quite content meant to just ride around and perhaps learn a little bit about the car and the conditions to then really try and go from near the front in race number 2. He'll still score a reasonable amount of points for this one. Where's he running? Gibson, he is 9th place, so he would score 12 points out of this. And then potentially could go on and win race number 2, which would net him a further 25. There are bonus points for fastest laps as well, so if he puts together a really good second race, that could still aid him in the championship. Right, on board with Jordan Taylor, 3rd position. Rain's still coming down, but the track conditions haven't deteriorated anything like as badly as I sort of expected them to. But Jordan Taylor doing his best now to try and get into 2nd place. He's caught Taylor, but now trying to find a way through is going to prove, I think, a little bit trickier.
It is indeed. I've just heard that Paul Laramie has received a drive-through for cutting the circuit a few too many times. Bit of a slap on the wrist for him. Well, a bit more than that, actually, because of the drive-through. He was inside the top 10. It's going to drop him right down, which means he potentially will have the pole position for race number 2. But all those points that he was hoping to score this time in this race, not going to happen just yet. But you're right, I think the conditions haven't really changed, have they? And, you know, as soon as the temperature of the track got up to, and the temperature of the tyres got up to the right amount, all of a sudden the car started to find grip. It hasn't been bothering them too much. I suppose it's just if they go offline or if they touch the grass, that's when the rain and the dampness would all of a sudden really kick them around the back. But yeah, you see little puffs of smoke here and there. That's not really skidding, that's not really locking or anything too bad. It's more, I think it's the tyres on the inside just giving a bit of a lock and maybe a bit of a skid. It's just the effect that the car has in the game. So it's yeah, a lot of drivers driving this particularly well. And, well, I thought Jordan Taylor was going to be catching up to Nicky Taylor on that lap, but it looks like Nicky's actually pulled away somewhat.
Yeah, Nicky used, I think, a couple of hybrids towards the end of the last lap and the beginning of this one to try and get away. Oliver Gibson, interestingly, starting to use his hybrids as well, so he's inching back towards Josh Martin, about to perhaps disprove our theory that he was sacrificing this race entirely. He's realised he needs to try and score points at any opportunity, really. To Redgate Corner they will go. Josh Martin not swinging out anything like as wide as some of the cars around him there, so taking a different line through the first turn. The leaders, though, just starting now to separate slightly. If anything, it's Carl Felvers now looking the raciest. Look, he's closed right in on Jordan Taylor now in the battle for 3rd position. So Jordan Taylor, from attack a lap or so ago, might now have to turn his attention more to defence.
He will indeed, because look, he's getting a little bit wide there. He's getting a nice exit, nice apex, late apex, but Kyle Felvers is actually throwing an awful lot of speed through that corner. He's not worried about the late apex getting on the power early, because he can carry that much momentum through, and seems to have the front end grip to get on the power just as early as Jordan Taylor. So that run up the hill, it's serving him quite nicely here for Kyle. What can he do going into turn 1? I don't think he's going to have much of an opportunity to the last couple of corners. Mullers that curb nicely. Maybe that's where the cutting was happening, that Paul Laramie was getting done for, because we don't actually know where he was cutting. But it's either going to be the final corner, it's going to be Old Hairpin, isn't it, Andy? I can't imagine there's anywhere else you would actually want to go on the inside of the circuit.
Maybe Coppice Corner, but yeah, I think you're very likely to be right that it's the chicane is usually the culprit, isn't it? Let's be honest, it's very, very easy to cut that corner, and there clearly is time to be gained from doing it as well. So yeah, that's I think more than likely where the penalties are being picked up. They've got to think of that now as we move into the final 5 minutes of the race. You can see there they're using a lot of curb, even just through the kink at Starkey's, really trying to maximise the amount of racetrack that they are allowed to use. All just bunching back together again now for 2nd place, isn't it? Joel Lask looks good value for the win, but Nicky Taylor now seemingly off the pace a bit more. And so Jordan Taylor is almost as close to him now as Felvers is to Jordan. Behind, Elliot Dalton-Ayres, they're going very defensive. Andy Carroll trying to find a way through, and Andy does take a big chunk of the grass on the inside at Coppice Corner there in his efforts to get an overlap down the back straight.
Yeah, and we'll see how they get on actually just before we cut back to the front, because look, Elliot Dalton-Ayres has managed to dispatch himself, but Josh Martin going for a big lunge up the inside, and my goodness me, basically starting a whole new corner there, wasn't he? Trying to find a way past. Jordan Taylor still ahead of Kyle Felvers for the time being, but looking further back at that little BMW battle, it does look like they've fought each other off for the time being. Lots of attempted moves, but not actually many have been able to be pulled off there, Andy, have they?
It's difficult, isn't it? Because everyone's so evenly matched. And it's not a track like, I don't know, a Barcelona or something like that, where you've got these really long straights where the hybrid sort of allows you to basically just drive past another car. Here you've got to really try and outfox somebody and be really aggressive under braking. Meanwhile, that's exactly what Carl Felvers is trying to do. I think around the outside of Jordan Taylor. Kyle isn't very happy, I can see, on the Zoom call, but I didn't really see anything that Jordan did particularly wrong. Meanwhile, Andy Carroll's on the grass in the background as well. It's all starting to kick off now, Jack, as we head into the final minutes.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are starting to feel that nerves as we're going into the last 3 minutes, wondering what they need to do for race number 2 as well. And you don't know where to look, do you, with between Carl Felvers, Jordan Taylor, or the BMWs and Andy Carroll. It's looking exciting as Carl Felvers is looking like he's giving Jordan Taylor something to think about up the inside into the first corner. He's got it nice and clean there by the looks of it, Andy.
Yeah, let's see on the exit. Still side by side, though. So Jordan well within his rights to try and stand his ground around the outside. He'll have the inside for the left-hand element of the crater curves, but the outside for the old hairpin. He's managed to squeeze back through. Yes, fantastic stuff from Jordan Taylor, who will not relinquish this third place without a fight. He and Carl Felvers may well be good friends off the track, but on track, fierce rivals, clearly. And Jordan Taylor there looking determined as, again, Kyle almost gets within touching distance through McLean's. Of course, Kyle in a difficult position though, because he's attacking Taylor and also having to watch the mirrors because Andy Dorman hasn't yet given up hopes of getting back onto the podium.
Yeah, in fact, I'm just going to bring up Kyle Felvers once more because I feel like we're going to get something to watch, aren't we? Because he is in a particularly difficult position right now. How's the young man going to deal with it? He is getting better and better with dealing with the pressures. Andy Dorman. Ooh. Oh, my days. I don't think that was any kind of ambitious move. I think it was trying to give him something to think about, and then he messed it up. To be honest, I don't think there was any chance at Dorman to be making that one, and he basically lets Kyle Felvers off all the pressure that we were just talking about.
Kyle shaking his head though because he'd used the hybrid out of the chicane, but I don't think he got a very good exit from the chicane, so it was almost a wasted hybrid really. Didn't actually allow him to
He still has one more
Jordan.
than the others though. He still has two, whereas Nicky Taylor, Jordan Taylor, Andy Dorman only have one.
Interesting. Okay, so Kyle might still have that advantage in the closing stages. We're in the closing stages now, really. Penultimate lap of the race we are on. And it is, I think, the battle between the Hyundais that we need to be focusing on. We do still have the Elliott Dalton-Ayres, Andy Carroll, Josh Martin and Oliver Gibson scrap going on further back. But I don't know, I just sense fireworks here. Carl Felvers, you can see the look of concentration on the young man's face. I love watching Kyle's Zoom camera because he looks bored 90% of the time. It's just his concentrating face is a look of boredom, and then all of a sudden springs into animation when he's upset about something or really excited about something. It's fascinating to watch. You get a real glimpse into his mind, and we might now see him getting a glimpse to the inside line into Redgate Corner. He's on the hybrid. Jordan Taylor is not. This should put him in a position to attack, Jack.
Yeah, I think Jordan Taylor did use his own though, but it was his last, crucially. So on to the last lap now. Jordan Taylor misses the apex just a touch. Is going to hurt him, not particularly. Joel Lass is well off in the distance. Nicky Taylor has a hybrid left as well, so Jordan Taylor's not going to worry him too much. Kyle Felvers, Elliott Dalton-Ayres on Andy Dorman actually, although he's about 5 seconds back thinking about it. I was going to say he has a few more hybrids, but it doesn't matter. Ignore them for the time being, because this, as Andy just said, is the place to be watching, isn't it? As they climb up the hill, Kyle Felvers still not using it. He knows when he wants to use it, doesn't he, Andy? Is that going to be into the final corner, or is it going to be out of the final corner?
I think it's got to be down the back straight, hasn't it? That run from the chicane to the timing line surely isn't long enough, so a good exit from Coppice is required. Yeah, look, jumps on the hybrid. Is this going to be enough, though? He's getting initial good drive. He's got the slipstream, but I don't think he's going to be close enough, is he? Yes, he might be. Jordan Taylor moves over to cover. Felvers commits to the inside line, though, and as long as he doesn't outbrake himself, he should get onto the podium. He has outbraked himself, bounces over the curves. Joel Lask is going to claim the race victory. Nicky Taylor second. It's almost a dead heat for third, but Jordan Taylor gets it back. You can see the smile of resignation there on Carl Felvers' face when he realised what had happened, and just by a nose, Jordan Taylor manages to get in front. That was fantastic stuff there between the two of them. And Jordan absolutely elated with that. And I think Kyle enjoyed the battle as well. Kyle carried so much speed, Jack, into that final chicane on the hybrid button, but he was on the tight line and just couldn't quite get the car stopped.
Yeah, it was entertaining. It was thrilling stuff to watch, wasn't it? And hopefully, well, we might not be able to have a chat to Kyle. We'll have a chat to Jordan as well. He'll give us his version of events. And we'll do that after this short break.
Yeah, as soon as we got the heat into them, suddenly the car came alive. So yeah, no, that was good fun.
Yeah, and obviously with the rain coming down quite heavily at the start of the race, having that initial confidence on slick tyres is not an easy thing to do. Were you at all tempted then to go with the wets? It looked like a few drivers were going to do that, and then they changed their mind last minute.
No, like I said, in quali, I was seeing what times people were doing, and it just wasn't wet times yet. So I knew that we wanted to stay on the slicks for that, and there was a chance of it clearing up potentially according to the weather forecast. So yeah, I thought I'd hang fire, stay on the slicks, pump the pressures up a bit, and just send it basically.
Well, the first race has gone very well for you. Your thoughts now for race 2? Slightly smaller grid this week. That helps you now, doesn't it? It's a good week to be winning race 1 because it means you've got a bit less overtaking to do in the second race, but it's never easy to get to the front, is it?
No, definitely not around this track. We'll see what happens. I mean, it's going to be a close bunch between everyone. I could see that behind me. Everyone was sort of here, there, and everywhere, right up the bumper of each other. So we'll have to see where the moves can be made and send it. But yeah, just whilst I got the chance, my dad's birthday today. So yeah, happy birthday, Dad. But yeah, we'll send it in race 2. Let's pull off some moves and have some fun.
Nicely done. Happy birthday to Joel's dad. Hope he's... does he watch along? Does he cheer you on these race nights?
He does indeed. He's probably watching now, to be fair.
Good. Well, we wish him a very happy birthday and a nice little birthday present you've been able to give him there. A double win, though. Just saying, that would be even more impressive. So no pressure, mate.
Nice one. Cheers, Andy.
Thanks, Joel. Congratulations on the win then, Jojo. Joel Lask wins our opening race of the night. Chased hard in the early stages, though, by our second place finisher, Nikki Taylor, who joins us as well in the comms box. And Nikki, you had good early pace. It did look like maybe you were using the hybrids to try and stay with Joel, but then second half of the race, you had to watch the mirrors a bit more than you would have liked, I think.
Yeah, about that. I saw the rain. I got scared, so I put slicks on like everyone else was gonna do. But instead of putting my normal pressures, I put wet pressures on them. So I was mint for lap 1 and 2. Like, it was so quick because the tyres were on. And then after about lap 3, they just fell off a cliff drastically. So I just had so much understeer. But yeah, I tried to rinse hybrids to try and either get ahead of Joel or stay with Joel. Because my plan was, because I knew my tyres were going to be screwed, I was just going to try and get ahead and then defend like my life depended on it. But I couldn't even do that because they just died. But yeah, it looks sunny for race 2, so shouldn't have that problem again. But yeah, it weren't too bad. Just kind of maintained where I was and just tried to maintain tyre wear.
Which you did reasonably well. Second place, a strong result for you. What now do you think your chances are of making good progress in that second race? Obviously, the right tyre pressures are going to help you, and we know you're not afraid to get your elbows out.
Yeah, I mean, it does help this week with there being, I think, 13 or 14 cars. So there's a lot less people to get through this week. And obviously with Chris and Paul having issues in race 1, there's already 3 places made up because of them two, and then Joel starting behind me anyway. So we're already way up the field. I think we might even be in top 10 to be fair for race 2. No, we're 11th. But yeah, 11th for reverse grid is mint, and yeah, just bomb through like I have been doing. Try and get a better race 2 than what I've had for Zandvoort and from whatever was before Zandvoort, Red Bull Ring, because in both of them races I've had to stop in the middle of the track to avoid a car. But yeah, hopefully we'll get through and it should be nice and clean.
Good stuff. Best of luck, Nikki, for that second race, and well done on the podium.
Cheers.
Nikki Taylor in second position. A lot of the action, though, in the closing stages was going on just behind him, where there was a fantastic scrap going on between Carl Felvis and Jordan Taylor for the final step of the podium. And despite a last corner lunge from Carl, it was Jordan who came out on top. Jordan, well done, first of all. That was a really great fight to watch. Did you enjoy that?
Yeah, that's probably the most fun in a battle I've had all season. It's a shame though, because as of next week will be my last round for a bit. I think I'm going to take a break from VRRC and just have a little break, because recently I've just been getting like too aggravated and stuff like that, and it's just not worth it. I come here to have fun, but tonight, this race, let's see what we can do in race 2. But this race was fun, as I said.
Well, that's nice to hear that you had fun. It's not nice to hear that you're going, though, because I feel like we're starting now to see your potential. We always knew you had this pace in you, and now learning the car a little bit more, coming to a track I'm sure that you're more familiar with, that probably boosted your confidence a bit for this round, I suppose.
Yeah, I've done multiple laps around Donny in loads of different cars, so I knew where I was going. It's just about getting the setup right and stuff like that. But I'm sure the boys at HFD will somehow convince me to come back.
And if they don't, we're going to do our best to as well. Maybe a win from towards the back in race 2 might convince you to stick around. Jordan, best of luck with that second race, and congratulations on coming out on top after what was a cracking battle.
Cheers, Andy.
So they were your podium finishers then from our first race of the night here at Donington Park, but we're only halfway through the action with another 20-minute race to come. And this time, as the drivers were referring to there, it's the reversed grid. Not a massive grid to be reversed this time, Jack, but it still puts drivers at the front who aren't used to being at the front. It puts drivers at the back who are, well, at this point, probably quite used to being at the back, actually, and having to fight their way forward. But around a track like Donington Park, I think we could see a bit of action here. Yes? Right. Okay. Well, we'll see how accurate that prediction is. Certainly, they're two drivers who could do with good results for different reasons, really. Josh Martin, I think, by his own admission, not a title contender this season. But would really like to turn his season around and get a good result. And of course, Oliver Gibson, as we have documented, definitely a title contender, needs good points. He's kind of put all of his eggs in his race 2 basket, hasn't he? He's got to try and score in this one. Otherwise, opportunity has sort of gone begging in a way for him to outscore Jack Smith by a significant amount. Remember that I said Jack will essentially end up scoring 32 points tonight. Well, at the moment, Oliver Gibson, I think, is on course to score about 12 points from the first race, so he needs to really be bare minimum top 2, and ideally taking the win and having a go at that fastest lap in this one. So yeah, the start is going to be important for both of those two drivers, but yep, on the front row of the grid, we've got Kenny Press in the Toyota on the left. On the right, Nelson Aprinosa and Alok Iyengar on the inside of that second row. And then, as Jack quite rightly said, it's BMW land, isn't it? 3rd, 4th and 5th place cars on the grid, all rear-wheel drive BMW 330is, with Oliver Gibson and Josh Martin next in line ahead of Andy Carroll. And you have to go all the way back to 10th, 11th and 12th places to find the top 3 from the previous race, with Jordan Taylor 10th, Nicky Taylor 11th. Of course, our race 1 winner, Joel Lask, starting from 12th. So just moments away then from our second race of the evening. Drivers are getting themselves ready to barrel off down into that Redgate corner. As Jack quite rightly said, the sun is now shining. It's dry. It doesn't look as though the track conditions are going to be too much of a concern this time around. Slick tyres definitely the way to go. Who is going to get into Redgate first? Who is going to claim the win in our second and final race of the evening? Time to find out then. Red lights are on, and then we will get the race underway now. Off they go, down towards Redgate corner they will head and look for those rear-wheel drive BMWs. Decent start made by Iyengar. Tries to find a gap up the middle, which he does find. Is Alok Iyengar going to go to the race lead? Yes, he does. There's contact then between Kenny Press and Nelson Aprinosa. What happens on the exit of Redgate corner? There's a lot of shuffling around. There are cars out in the gravel, and already that looks to me like Kyle Felvers is into the top 5, Jack.
Yeah, you're not wrong, to be fair. Oliver Gibson is in first place. Josh Martin's getting bullied around in third place. In fact, there's a little bit of contact as Kenny Press goes wide. I think that's going to let Josh Martin off potentially, because he looked like he was going to go very wide. Kenny Press is off the road. Oliver Gibson is up the road.
Kyle Felvers is smiling, and quite rightly so, because he's in second place, Jack, already. Oh, there's carnage further back. That's Paul Laramie off the road. He has tangled with Joel Lask. He's tangled with Joel Lask, the race 1 winner, off into the gravel trap at McLean's corner after contact with Paul Laramie. Lask has rejoined, and he might now be about to gain some more places with some silliness going on at Coppice corner. He does. He gets past Alok Iyengar and Nelson Aprinosa, who were both off the road, but what a topsy-turvy opening lap. Oliver Gibson leads at the the chicane. Kyle Felber second, Dalton Ayres third, Josh Martin fourth, and that was Chris Blakey taking a very agricultural line through the chicane.
Yeah, I thought we're potentially under safety car conditions, actually, but no, we're not. That's why I was so shocked that there was going to be a lunge by Chris Blakey. Let's have a look at how he gets on, though. Chris Blakey up the inside of Nicky. No, who is that up the inside of, actually? Or is it Nicky? I'm not sure who is battling there, actually, but
Jordan, I think.
Is that Jordan Taylor potentially? Yeah, he looks as calm as ever on the Zoom call, but then Kyle Felber's looking a bit more animated, isn't he, in this particular race, which is slightly surprising given how good a start he had.
Indeed so. I don't think Carl Felvers could quite believe the start that he got there. You saw him sort of shaking his head and in disbelief as he came across the line, but he is into second spot and gaining on Oliver Gibson. Cars sideways in the background. That's Chris Blakey in the gravel. In fairness, Jordan Taylor just ahead of him also got a little bit squirrely, but managed to keep it largely on the island. There goes Joel Last through picture, then Paul Laramie some way back, along with Alok Iyengar and the rest of them who had dramas at the start of the race. Gibson, though, trying his best to get away. For me, though, Jack, it's the car in third that maybe looks the fastest on this lap. The hybrids perhaps having something to do with that, but Elliot Dalton Ayres up for the fight this time.
Yeah, he does look good, doesn't he? I tell you what, I was glad that I accidentally muted myself when we came back in talking about the talking about the BMWs fighting for first into turn one. Well, Oliver Gibson was up there, but Kyle Felbers, look at how close he is now, and Elliot Dalton Ayres, like you just mentioned. He is right up for this fight. I don't think this is going to be easy for anybody, but the nice clear weather, I think, has given everyone a little bit more confidence.
Yeah, down through the crater curves they go, side by side behind. That was Nicky Taylor, I think, fending off Jordan Taylor for the time being. Joel Last, meanwhile, got past Andy Carroll, and Taylor has just got it all wrong down at the old hairpin, and will lose a lot of momentum now, climbing uphill towards McLean's corner. But look at the race leaders. Carl Felbers on the rear bumper now of Oliver Gibson. A bit wide there through McLean's, but is still looking like he's got more pace than Gibson, who is now facing something that I certainly hate as a driver when I'm sim racing. I hate being out in front, especially if I feel that the cars behind me are that little bit quicker, because it's so easy to just drive in the wing mirrors too much, make a few mistakes, and you're terrified to leave the door open going into any of the braking zones. You can see there how much more speed Felbers had through the chicane. Almost a bit too much though, ran almost into the back of the BMW, and look, momentum, it's that key word again. He lost it coming out of the chicane, and Gibson breathes easy for the time being.
Yeah, it's that classic front wheel drive, being able to muller the curbs a little bit easier, isn't it, and absolutely fly over them, whereas look at that, Oliver Gibson, as soon as it's a little bit more smooth, he can get on the power and get all the way down, with Carl Felbers looking in his rearview mirrors at Elliot Dalton Ayres, who just gets scared out of it going down the crater curves, I think a little bit going into Old Hairpin. The BMW completely sideways ahead. Just goes to show how much information these drivers are taking on at any one time, isn't it? I think that's what shocks a lot of people when they first joined the VRRC. Look, even Kyle's agreeing with me. He's shaking his head, he's nodding his head. He's saying about how impressive his driving is. Yes, that is me. Yeah, I think that goes to show, I think that's what a lot of the learning curve is when we have new people coming into the VRRC, is how close everybody is and how you're constantly having to look behind you and in front of you. That's obvious if you say that to a racing driver, but trust me, new people coming into sim racing, they haven't had that kind of experience before, and it's one of the biggest learning curves.
Yeah, absolutely. My regular British GT co-commentator Joe Osborne once said that racing drivers make 1,000 decisions a second, and it really is true. You do not realise the amount of decision making that goes on through every corner, every braking point, down every straight. The brain never stops. You finish 2 20-minute races like this, and your brain feels frazzled at the end of the night. It's a really bizarre feeling, but it's because you have to concentrate, especially when you're in a situation like these race leaders are. Oliver Gibson trying to defend a race lead. Carl Felbers trying to find a way through without leaving himself vulnerable to attack from Elliot Dalton Ayres behind. It really is headache-inducing, but they stay as they are for now. Bit of separation actually being built up between them as they head up the hill. We're 5.5 minutes into the race now, so things are just starting to settle down, and maybe Oliver Gibson starting to get those tyre pressures into a window that he's a bit happier with.
Yeah, I'm more reeling of the fact that you commentate a race series without me, Andy.
I know,
just,
unthinkable.
Just rude. But whatever, I'll let it off. It's a thing. Anyway, we go into this sort of second quarter of the race, shall we say? And you're right, I think things have sort of calmed down so much. We're not used to seeing this from our reverse grid. Normally, we're still seeing people flying up the inside and trying to sort themselves out 3/4 of the way through, let alone 5 minutes in. But it just, all of a sudden, this race feels like it could be race 1 again.
Exactly, yeah. Well, it didn't take as long, did it, to get the quick drivers to the front, and helped by the fact a couple of them, certainly Gibson, started quite close to the front anyway, but it's still got potential, this race, I think. I do not think Gibson's going to have the pace to break away here, a la Joel Lask in the first race. What of Joel, by the way? Well, he's 8th position and actually marching now onto the back of Andy Dorman and Jordan Taylor ahead of him, so he could gain a few more places out of this race, but certainly not ideal, that little collision that he had in the early stages with Paul Laramie, who there drops down through the old hairpin a few seconds and a couple of places further back. But Joel Lask will be a little bit frustrated, I think. Clearly had some good pace tonight and just hasn't really been able to get the results out of it that he probably deserves.
Yeah, it's the way it goes, isn't it? Unfortunately, you sort of wait all season for an opportunity to show what you can do and get with a track that you sort of feel you're comfortable with, and all of a sudden it just goes away from you for some reason, doesn't it? It's that's motorsport for you, isn't it? It's 80% disappointment, 20% elation, and that's if you're lucky. But it's, you know, glad to see we have got Joel Lask returning to us. At the beginning of this season, we did think that he was struggling a little bit, but it is nice to see that all of a sudden he's coming back, and coming back is Elliot Dalton-Ayres, right at the inside of Carl Felbus.
Yes, indeed so. Through Redgate Corner, and they're side by side coming down the Craner curve, so Carl won't be particularly happy with this. Dalton-Ayres trying his best to wriggle through. There's a bit of contact there. Felbus sideways. What a brilliant catch that was from Kyle, but that certainly won't have improved his mood, and now Dalton-Ayres is back alongside him and on the hybrid heading uphill. This should now be a done deal, but no, Felbus closed the door. That's really interesting. I didn't think he'd be able to do that. This is now, though, relieving the pressure from Oliver Gibson out in front. He's suddenly got a 1 second gap over these two squabbling Hyundais. It was a brilliant side-by-side battle, but so near to disaster.
It was, wasn't it? And I was just having a look, seeing what the situation with the hybrids are. Oliver Gibson has 12. That's 3 more than Kyle Felbus. That's 2 more than Elliot Dalton-Ayres. Oliver Gibson with 12, Kyle Felbus with 9, Elliot Dalton-Ayres with 7, Nicky Taylor with 7, Josh Martin with 9 as Kyle Felbus and Jordan Taylor start using theirs now. But yeah, Oliver Gibson, king of the hybrids right now. Absolutely no pressure on him to use them. Every time they come up to him, they stop squabbling over each other.
Indeed so. Speaking of which, some squabbling going on further back. Joel Lask up the inside of Andy Dorman, and that puts now the race 1 winner into 7th position. He's still got over half the race to go, and if they really do start knocking lumps out of each other in front, he could gain a few more places out of this. He's got the speed, we know he has, and was really strong in the second half of the race earlier on in the evening. Trying to pair off a bit at the front now. Carl Felbus going back after Oliver Gibson. Dalton-Ayres falling back into the clutches of Nicky Taylor, rather. Nicky's having a good night as well, second in the first race despite the tyre pressure faux pas, and he's now knocking on the door perhaps of another podium finish, and he's another driver who knew the significance tonight of scoring well. He's going to be hungry to try and move up a place or 2 extra before the flag.
He is indeed, yeah, and he's looking like his appetite is building as he goes down towards the final corner, and Elliot Dalton-Ayres' rear bumper starts to come closer and closer into his view. It's going to be a tricky situation for Nicky, though, because is he going to try and make that move into 3rd place, or does he allow Elliot Dalton-Ayres a little bit of room to try and catch up? No, forget that. He's going straight at the inside of Josh Martin as Jordan Taylor for company.
Yep, so that was hybrid usage there from Nicky Taylor and from Jordan Taylor in the background as well. They both made their respective moves stick by using the hybrid down the pit straight when the cars ahead of them weren't. So Taylor goes 3rd, Nicky Taylor, that is. Jordan Taylor goes up into 5th position, and of course the car immediately behind them is Joel Lask. So he is rubbing his hands with glee, seeing them starting to battle just in front, as he now realises that he could join in that fight as well. Up the hill they will head then, the lead gap only 0.4 of a second. You feel that there are plenty more battles to be had here, and now that Taylor's into 3rd position, he's released into clean air. Can he perhaps close in on the top 2 as well?
Well, Carl Felbus needs to probably take advantage of this opportunity by catching up to Gibson and having a nice 1 second plus gap to the cars behind. But remember, Oliver Gibson has 11 hybrids left, Carl Felbus only 7. So anything Kyle does here to try and get past Oliver Gibson can either just patiently wait to get back through. Speaking of back through, Joel Lask is overtaking Josh Martin quite nicely there. So who's that? Is that Chris Blakey going for the drifting? I don't know if there is a rally course here at Donington Park. You'd probably know Andy better than me, but not the way you want to do it. Joel Last gets punted by Josh Martin.
Oh no, that was just a miscommunication in the braking zone. We were on board with Josh at the time. Where did
He looks guilty,
Lask
doesn't
end
he?
up? Oh, yes. There's Lask, recovering from the gravel trap for a second time tonight. Yeah, that's Josh tried to move out from behind Joel. Josh tried to move out from behind Joel. That's very, very easy for me to say, as you can tell, and just misjudged it slightly. Clipped the back of the Hyundai and round he went. You do see that kind of thing happening to Redgate with some regularity. And unfortunately, I think there's only one way that decision is likely to go. So Josh Martin will certainly not be particularly proud of that one. Joel Lask is going to be absolutely furious, though, because he worked so hard to get into a position where maybe some good points could be on the table, and all of a sudden they go begging.
Yeah, well, Andy Dorman's now on the hybrid trying to catch up to Josh, who probably has half a mind. Oh, I've just seen him in the Zoom call absolutely soaring at his wheel over that curb. He probably has half a mind to think, oh, is it worth dropping backwards and giving Joel Lask that position back? But here comes Andy Dorman on Josh Martin, and Josh isn't letting this up without a fight, is he? Dorman right on the rear end of him as they're coming out to the corner, down towards the Craner curves into Old Hairpin. Andy, which way do you think this one's going to go?
Oh, well, let's see. Josh Martin on the defence very much so, and Andy Dorman seeing an opportunity to gain another place out of the Old Hairpin they head, and that BMW working quite well actually out of the Old Hairpin, but they're both on the hybrid, and yet Dorman was gaining more out of it than Martin was. At the front of the field, meanwhile, Jack, have we had a lead change? Yes, we have. That's Felvers in front now. Carl Felvers has gone to the lead of the race. Gibson down to second. Didn't see how it happened, but it was on for a little while, wasn't it, really? Carl Felvers looked the quicker of the two, and now he's got the track position advantage. Can Gibson fight back? Well, with Taylor on the inside. What a lunge from Nicky Taylor from a different postcode heading into the chicane. I don't think it worked, but it has at least now let Carl Felvers escape out in front.
Yeah, going down towards the first corner. Elliot Dalton-Ayres is actually in the party who's most interested in a late lunge here on Nicky Taylor, looking at the inside. My goodness me. Maybe the cameras made that look a little bit closer than it was, but it was certainly a little bit touch and go, wasn't it, as far as we were concerned. But Oliver Gibson, with 8 hybrids left, double that of Kyle Felvers. And for those of you who aren't quite as quick as maths as my good colleague here, it's going to be, that means 4 hybrids for Kyle Felvers. Andy, just in case you were struggling there.
Whoever told you I was good at maths has given you some duff information, that's for sure. Thank you for explaining for my benefit if no one else is. So, Carl Felvers then, yeah, you're absolutely right. 8/10 of a second up the road, but with less hybrid use. So if Gibson can sort of get his head down here, get back into the groove, he might still have a chance of coming back at him. We're 5 3/4 minutes away from the conclusion of this second race of the night. And Carl Felvers could be on for a superb score here. A podium just went begging in the race earlier on tonight, but now on maybe for the race win, because Gibson at the moment can't live with him. They're both on the hybrid heading out of the chicane this time. So too is Nicky Taylor in third, though. Now we've seen that he's confident under braking. Gibson doesn't seem as confident on the brakes. Is that going to yield a move for Taylor into Redgate Corner? Not for the time being. I
don't know whether Gibson's got a bit of damage or something, but it just seems even with that, when he's using the hybrid, the likes of Nicky Taylor and Carl Felvers just seem a little bit quicker than him in a straight line. I wonder what the downforce settings that Gibson has on that BMW. But crucially, Nicky Taylor only has 1 hybrid left. So, and he's got 5 minutes of this race to go. He's not going to be winning this one. No matter how well he uses that 1 last hybrid, I just don't think he's got it in him, unfortunately for Taylor. But Oliver Gibson is probably not that panicked. Elliot Dalton-Ayres only has the 1 hybrid left as well, so there could be a good scrap between Nicky Taylor, Elliot Dalton-Ayres and Jordan Taylor for third place. Jordan Taylor has 4 hybrids left, but he's the furthest back in that little pack. So, yeah, there's going to be plenty of storylines left to come in the last 4 minutes and 30 seconds. Kyle Felvers, I imagine, is feeling pretty good about this, but he won't know the situation that the BMW has behind him.
No, that's a very good point. The drivers don't get that hybrid information that we do, so he's sort of second guessing a little bit right now, but looks good out in front. Oliver Gibson chasing him down. Remember that Gibson's carrying some weight as well after a good score a week ago. That perhaps explains why his car looks a bit more sluggish in a straight line. They also, of course, did make some balance performance tweaks to the Beamer a few rounds ago, which haven't slowed it down over the course of a lap by a huge amount, but maybe have just affected the drag, the straight line performance of the 3 Series a little bit. But either way, it's still a competitive car, and Gibson on this lap taking a tenth or so out of Carl Felvers through the first few corners. Let's see whether he can keep on building around the rest of the lap and get himself back into striking range. The trouble is, though, that even if he does catch Felvers, it looks like he's bringing Nicky Taylor with him.
It does indeed, yeah. Nicky Taylor's all over the back. Gibson just cannot pull up to the back of Carl Felvers, despite... I know they haven't really been using the hybrids that much, but just on raw pace, Felvers seems to have it in him, doesn't he? He seems to have a decent sort of one-lap pace, which I suppose explains why he was qualifying quite high up the order earlier on. I can't actually remember how high up he qualified. I was concentrating on a few other things at the time, but it's going to be exciting, that's for sure. And as Nicky Taylor just gets dropped a touch, Jordan Taylor is interested in taking that 4th place away from Elliot Dalton-Ayres, but no lunge for the time being. Joel Lask has got Andy Carroll for company. I thought it was going to be a lot closer, but it's not actually anywhere near it either at the moment.
I think Lask has recently got back past Carroll, but also appears to have run out of hybrids, so that's not going to help his chances of holding on to that 8th place. 8th really not where he would have been hoping to be at this stage of the race. 2.5 minutes to go, and Carl Felvers looking good out in front. Can Oliver Gibson stay second? Can Jordan Taylor find a way past Elliot Dalton-Ayres for 4th? It looks like he might do with hybrid assistance. Yes, sweeps around the outside, and he's moved his way up into the top 4 once again. So Jordan Taylor on course for one of his best nights of the season so far. In fact, Jordan Taylor's best score so far actually coming at Red Bull Ring, where he scored 42 points. And while he was 3rd in the earlier race, he's now 4th position, so not quite scoring as many as that, but it's another strong night for the youngster in the bright yellow and black Hyundai. Bounces its way across the curves at the chicane. There is Joel Lask in behind Josh Martin now as well. So 2 laps to go here, Jack, and quite a few scores still to be settled.
Yeah, well, I'm curious. And Oliver Gibson still, but 2 minutes to go, he's still got 4 hybrids left. That seems like an awful lot to me. I don't know about you, Andy, but we were certainly seeing people chew through them a little bit quicker in the previous race. The likes of Andy Dorman, Joel Lask, Paul Laramie, and Alok Iyengar have all used all of them at this point in the race. And Andy Carroll still has 6 as well, so I'm not entirely sure what he's been doing, but here comes Oliver Gibson. He's starting to use them up the hill now as well, with 3 remaining once this one has been used, so expect him to start catching up.
Yeah, indeed so. I mean, Gibson can use 2 a lap, I suppose, can't he? So he used 1 out of the old hairpin just now, and then the cooldown period will have ended in time for him to use another one down the exhibition straight, I presume, although he's not yet using it. That's interesting. So saving 3 maybe for the final lap of the race. He's closing slowly but surely onto Felvers, but clear that he's leaving this just a little bit too late now. Taylor right behind him, Nicky and Jordan. Dalton-Ayres 5th, Dorman 6th, and then side by side further back for 7th, Joel Lask and Josh Martin. And Josh Martin hangs on, but there's a bit of a touch on the apex. Remember, these 2 tangled at Redgate a few laps ago, with Lask very much coming off the worst, and now he's exacting his revenge. But look, it's actually Andy Carroll who benefits with a supreme run past the pits. He gains 2 places.
Yeah, Joel Lask still at the inside, though, of Josh Martin, and I think he's managed to get that one after the exit. Yes, he has. Bit of a lock-up just behind. But yeah, Josh Martin having a very entertaining race, even if the front end hasn't quite delivered. Josh Martin, Joel Lask coming together yet again. Is that number 2 or number 3 that we've had so far today?
Either way, I think Josh Martin has worked his way well and truly off Joel Lask's Christmas card list. That's 1 too many bits of contact, I think, between those 2 in this race. Right, out of Coppice we go for the final time, and Oliver Gibson is closer than he's been for quite a while, actually. He'll surely use the hybrid. No, he's not using the hybrid. Does Oliver Gibson think there's another lap? There isn't. The time has ticked down to 0, and he's not used that final hybrid. That's no, it's all gone wrong. Gibson's around. There was contact between the Taylors, and Oliver Gibson gets absolutely annihilated. Kyle Felvers wins the race, and who's going to be second? It's Nicky Taylor second. It is Dalton-Ayres third, and a furious Jordan Taylor comes across the line, still in 4th place somehow. Andy Dorman 5th. And Oliver Gibson only 6th. What drama at the final corner.
Yeah, lots of big protagonists in that one, and a few not so happy customers, I imagine, as well, coming out of that car. Not ideal for a lot of them, unfortunately. So much drama. It looked like a bit of a late lunge by Jordan Taylor. Just got the braking zone all mixed up, didn't he? But we'll be going into a short advert break, and I suppose we can try and dissect what exactly just happened there, Andy, because my goodness me, it's going to take some dissecting. We'll be back in a second.
Final race of the night here at Donington Park saw a lot of action right the way through, even into the final turn, but it was a victory in the end for Kyle Felvers, who just missed out on the podium in the first race. And Kyle, that I think more than makes up for it. A brilliant drive by yourself. The progress you made on lap 1 was better, I'm sure, than even you expected.
Yeah, I mean, I got really lucky through lap 1. I think I put my car in perfect positions, especially in old hairpin. We had Josh who went slightly wide, and then Elliot was on the inside, and I went for the middle, and the middle worked, so we got through. And then from there, it was just a case of following Ollie and then waiting for the right moment, which I found.
Yeah, let's talk us through that then, because you were sort of hunting him down for a little while. You caught him, you sort of were sizing him up for a few laps, and then did eventually make that decisive move. Were you just planning all of that time, or you know, were you really pushing hard to try and force a mistake? Because you were behind him for a number of laps.
I think he was getting away from me, to be fair, at some points. Ollie did have pace. I think the track felt really weird. Obviously, it looks dry on the stream for everyone, but it felt like it was wet. I mean, that's the joys of sim racing. You can have different things, but it didn't feel like it did when it rained, if you get what I mean.
Sort of. A bit like a green track, maybe like the rain had sort of washed the rubber away. Maybe that would reduce the grip, I guess.
Yeah, I mean,
I can clear it up for you guys if you like.
Ah, please do, Rich.
So the weather was set to be dry with puddles. Unfortunately, there was a server update in the week from the server guys. It looks like it's overwritten it. So graphically, the puddles weren't there, but physically, the effect of them was. So that's what it was.
There we go. Well, we can't be making the drivers' lives too easy now, can we, Rich?
No,
so
absolutely
that explains it then, Carl. But you managed to overcome those quite strange conditions to get the race victory. And what a great scoring night it was for you, narrowly missing out the podium earlier on. A race win now as well, though. Back in the championship hunt, I reckon.
Yeah, it was a good fight. I'm starting to get the hang of the car. I mean, Zandvoort was a track that I love because it's so technical, like I was saying last week in my interviews, and I think that really helped. And then Donington's my favourite circuit in the UK, so I've sort of been gifted with the two tracks we've had now. And coming into Hockenheim, Hockenheim's good. It's a good track. It's very flowy, and then you can have a really good battle there. So hopefully we can get some good points there and be back in it.
Good stuff. Well, Kyle, great to have you back on the top step of the podium. A really superb night from you tonight. Well done.
Thanks, Andy.
So Kyle Felvers is the race winner. Then now, second position was... now, I actually thought it was Nicky Taylor. I may have written this down wrong, but Jack, was it definitely Elliot in second?
I'll be honest, I asked Rich and he said Elliot. Who came second?
That's fine. Rich is gone. Rich knows best. Elliot, we'll ask you. Were you second place at the end of that one?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know what happened.
No,
in
it was
that
Nicky.
corner.
Sorry, it was Nicky. My apologies.
Thank you. I was really doubting myself then. Well, we'll still have a chat with Elliot because you popped up out of nowhere there at the end. What was your view of the final corner?
I don't know. I was just kind of like looking at all the fastest times, and then I look back to the corner and see 3 people are off. But I kind of played well into my hands and somehow scraped a third place or whatever it was. But yeah,
It was third. Well, we can confirm it was third place. The wheels have rather fallen off all of a sudden. But yes, you did manage to finish in third. And that was really the highlight of your night. It seemed like maybe the raw pace wasn't quite there tonight. Would that be fair?
Yeah. Going from that wet race or sort of wet race in the race one, I put my pressures up really high, and then I dropped them back down. But I forgot what my pressures were, and I dropped them a bit too far down, and they were freezing. Like more than what the other people were saying. But yeah, it was an alright night, I guess.
Thoughts now for Hockenheim, the final round. Obviously, the championship now a bit of a stretch for you, but it would be nice to end the season with a couple more results. Is that a track that you have a lot of experience at? It seems like it's been a while since we last raced there.
Yeah, it's been quite a while since we've raced there. I think maybe last race was Cupra's or the other touring cars, but I only remember getting a win there in the Cupra's, so I guess it's not too bad of a track for me, but I'm not really looking forward to it.
Excellent. Always nice to end an interview on a bit of positivity, Elliot. Thank you for that. And well done on the podium, mate.
Thank you.
So Elliot Daltonaires in third place. We will now rewind time, pretend none of that happened, and chat to our second place finisher, which was Nicky Taylor. You can forgive us, I think, Nicky, for getting a bit confused there because, well, it was quite a confusing final few moments of that race.
Yeah, that was a weird race because Joel started saying in pre-race he went, it's raining behind, but no one I think took it into account or no one even thought anything of it, and then it didn't seem to rain in the race and it was just like understeer heaven for the first few laps. So I kind of whacked my brake bars up and then hoped it would stick, and then eventually, like about 7 minutes or something from the end, it started to dry out. So yeah, it was all right. But yeah, I kind of went into the last corner. I braked and then turned into the corner. Jordan, I think, braked at the same point. He might have been a hybrid. I don't know what happened, but I got a hit from behind and then went into Ollie as a case of that, and then cut the chicane because I had to, because I had nowhere else to go, and then kind of come through in second. But yeah, I was bricking it when I went over that chicane because I'd already had 3 cut warnings.
Oh.
I think they were all a bit harsh, but I had 3 cut warnings, and then I thought it was going to ding me for that and give me a drive through, but luckily it didn't. And yeah, I'm 17 points behind Jack now, so it's completely doable. But also from second down to 6th is 6 points. So it's, if you exclude Jack from this championship, then it's ridiculously tight. But even so, if Jack doesn't do Hockenheim or whatever, or he's not here, if I get 47 points, I think or 48 points confirms it, but I think 47 will be level on points, so we should be okay.
I'm going to take your word for that, Nicky, because it is far too late in the day for me to be doing maths, but certainly you're in the hunt. Second place, like you said, in the championship, and very much gunning for that, heading into Hockenheim. Is that a track where you think you should be on the pace to be winning races again?
I love Hockenheim. It's one of my, it's a me circuit. It suits me to a T, and every time I've been there, I've either had double podium or really good results. So hopefully we can keep that going. And yeah, as I said, Jack's drop score is a 30, which is just ridiculous how that's his lowest drop score. But yeah, so for me to do that, if he ain't here, then obviously need to have a decent night. But yeah, to come away from Donington with 2 seconds, I wouldn't have predicted that at all coming into this round, because I'll say it again, like I've said before, Donington is for me the worst track in the UK. I don't like it. I can't get to grips with it. It's not a me circuit, but yeah, the pace was there, and I just come away. But it's a bit annoying, the fact that I set my tyre pressures up for wet pressures initially in race 1, and then I changed them back, and it goes to being wet in race 2. So had I done that, I think I would have been up there. But yeah, it's one of them, and I think Hockenheim suits me, so we can definitely push on, and hopefully, if not get the championship, at least finish ahead of Ollie and Kyle and all the 4 or 5 that are gunning for second.
Absolutely. Well, we look forward to it, Nicky. Congrats on the podium in slightly chaotic fashion, albeit, but it's still a good second place finish, and we'll see you again next week.
See you next week.
I
Same
blame
here.
you, Andy.
I would too. That's the general rule of thumb I've found over the years. Yes. So, well, I'll tell you what, Rich, whilst you're here, we'll get your thoughts on that. That was entertaining, dramatic, unpredictable. Everything we've come to expect, really, of late from the VRRC.
Yeah, it was good fun, that. Obviously, I'm not racing this week. I just started sitting on the sidelines and in inverted commas, help you guys.
When's that going to start, Rich?
Yeah, exactly.
But no, that was fun. Donington, they all know Donington so well because they've raced it so many times. So I expected it to be fairly clean, and in general, it was pretty clean. Obviously, there's got a couple of issues at the back end of race two, which I'm sure we'll look at on Monday evening, the race debrief. But no, I enjoyed it. Do you know what? I'm really looking forward to the Hockenheim though. So bring it on.
Yeah, it should be a really exciting championship finale. Lots of places to use the hybrid. That's traditionally produced some of the best racing this season, I think, a track where you've got lots of long straights and the drivers maybe are in two minds as to where to use it. Where's your money going then in the championship? Obviously, Jack Smith has this big lead. Actually, we don't know. Do you know if he is going to be back for the final round?
I don't, to be honest. I'm pretty something at the back of my head, and bear in mind, I forget things on a regular occasion, but something at the back of my head says that he's not here next week as well. I'm sure he said he had 2 missed rounds for this championship, so that means that next week's a missed round for him as well. So yeah, it's getting tight at the top, and as Nicky says, there's only 17 points in it between him and Jack, so who knows, it could go to the wire.
Well, that's what Nicky was saying. If Jack's not here, Nicky needs to score 47 points to tie for the lead. That is doable, but it would need to be a very, very good night. But he was feeling confident, wasn't he? So, going to be an exciting final round for sure. And whichever way it goes, I'm sure there's a bit more drama still around the corner.
Absolutely. And the one thing that Nicky doesn't lack is confidence. So, which is great. It's great to see that he's up for the fight and he doesn't want to settle for second place. So, yeah, bring it on. Let's see what he's got in store.
Good stuff. Thank you, Rich, and thank you for your help. You have been very helpful, actually, over the course of the last hour or so, so we thank you for that. Right then, Jack, why don't we take a little look then at what this... Oh, he's already on it. Look at that. This is how the championship standings look. Jack Smith still in the lead, but as we were saying there, Jack Oliphant, it's not actually as comfortable a lead as it looks, certainly if he's going to end up missing next week.
It's going to be a bit difficult for him, but he's up for the task, is Jack. If he's back, obviously, if he's not, then it's he's leaving it to the fates that be. Oliver Gibson will be certainly a driver who's ruining a missed opportunity, whether forced or not. We'll let the stewards decide that through the week, shall we say, at that end of race 2. But Nicky Taylor at the moment is certainly enjoying himself, and by the sounds of it will enjoy Hockenheim. Kyle Felvis in the fight, currently tied on points with Oliver before all judicials are done and everything else. So's Elliot Dalton. My goodness, I know what I know. All of a sudden, something just slightly went wrong there. The Zoom meeting, I think, ended, which means I think that you can't see the screen anymore either, Andy. Ultimately, a lot of the drivers are very close in contention. That might change slightly when we actually go into the final race. Of course, I'll carry it on because Andy can't see my screen anymore. Hockenheim. We've been to so many brilliant circuits. We made the trip back to Blighty here today, and that meant we were at Donington Park, but we have got back to Europe for Hockenheim in a week's time to see it all out. And let's hope that Jack Smith is there, because it would be a bit of a shame, Andy, if he isn't here to round out what will potentially be our champion.
Yeah, indeed. So it's not the way he'd want to win it, certainly. But if he does turn up, he only really needs one solid race result out of the 2, and he should be more than in contention. But it's going to be interesting. It's a fascinating circuit, Hockenheim, and whether he's there or not, Jack Smith, it's going to be a very, very entertaining final round. I'd also like to put it on record, I passionately disagree with Nicky Taylor. I think Donington Park is a fantastic racetrack. Also wanted on record that Carl Felvis forgot to wish his father a happy birthday in his interview. So I'll do that for you now, Carl. Happy birthday to Adrian, who is 21 again, I believe, and I'm sure has been celebrating for quite some time. Right, I think, Jack, that is us done. Entertaining night of racing here from Donington Park. We will all be back again in a week's time when we head to Hockenheim, as we've been saying, for those final 2 rounds of the championship. So be sure to join us. It's going to be exciting. We'll see you then.